Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started here in just a second. Hope everybody's having a great Sunday. Try and move out of the way here so you guys can see the car that we're working on today. Also try and speak up a little bit because I have the battery charger on the car because we're going to be demanding a lot of the battery today. Good afternoon, Didier. So it is Super Bowl Sunday. Anyone going to watch the Super Bowl tonight? Hi, Kenneth. Get a few more people in here. Oh, a lot of people are coming in. Someone just texted me to ask where the live stream was. Well, we're up and live now. So everybody should get their notifications here in just a second. Hello, not Nathan. It's a beautiful day outside. Hope everybody's having a great Sunday. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to be looking at this 1986 944 Turbo. We just finished rebuilding, but when I was in here yesterday trying to move it out, didn't want to start. So I thought that this would be a fun exercise for us to go through and just see what's going on with it. And we'd do it live. So you get to kind of see my thought process as we're going through and trying to diagnose no start conditions. Good afternoon, Hans. And good afternoon, John. So before we get started, I am going to just remind you guys that the Helen Meat registration is now open. I just finished our brand new website for it. So go over to adreas.com/HelenMeat. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned this year, and hopefully it'll be a great turnout as it always is. So it's the largest 944 meet in the Southeast. So I hope you guys will register, and I'll see you there. Kenneth asked, how much horsepower is on the 86? So this is stock engine. It's got 217 SAE horsepower. And I always try and make sure I say SAE horsepower because that's what we use here in the United States. So it'd be 220 metric horsepower if you're in Europe. So I get a lot of comments sometimes, especially on my, sorry, still getting text asking where the live stream is. So hopefully they'll all join here in a second, or they're watching by now. Sometimes there's a delay. But I get a lot of comments about that. So a lot of Europeans were like, we had 163 horsepower over here. It's like, well, when you look in the service manual, we use SAE net horsepower, not the gross horsepower. So the difference is over there, they were allowed to get away with using gross horsepower. And now that's not the case, but back then they were. So we don't have a gross horsepower for the US. So you can only compare the two. You can only take the two net horsepowers. So both of them are in SAE net that we use here. So that might be probably around 158 horsepower in metric, but we don't actually have the number. And it gets kind of a little tricky with the math. So without knowing exactly what the printed stuff is, I don't use it. So the 924S and the early 944 here might have had, 147 SAE net, but they had 150 metric horsepower. So we just use those figures that are actually published by Porsche here. Good afternoon, James. Great to see you here. Good afternoon, Jim. Not Nathan says, I had no idea that the turbo had that much more horsepower than the NA. Yeah, that's got about 30% more horsepower than the typical naturally aspirated engine. So, um, pretty good. And I was talking to a guy the other day. He came in and he was asking about, he's interested in buying an S2. He asked me, um, how much horsepower it made. And I says, what is it, 209 horsepower. And that's the net horsepower. And he said, was that it? And I'm like, well, you got to think that this is a big block, 4-cylinder. So it has a very flat torque curve, which is what you want, not only for racing, but for the street, especially. So you have a wider power band of torque. And a lot of Japanese cars back then might say they had 260 horsepower or something, but you would notice, like with the 300ZX, I believe that the 300ZX turbo, I can't remember how much it had. I think it was 200 horsepower or something like that, but they were incredible. Like, they were slower than the base 944s because they would go for horsepower, but they would leave the torque out. So they would just wind the engine out, and there wasn't a solid, firm basis for torque. And so you'd get a higher horsepower number, but you'd have less torque, and it was a much different driving experience. So the Porsche numbers look lower, but overall you get a faster car, and it's a better driver on the street and better race car. So hope that explains some of that stuff to you guys. But I get a lot of comments about the difference between the net horsepower, the metric horsepower, and the SAE net. And also a lot of questions about, like, why does the number seem lower? So this stock NA car had 143 horsepower. That's about as much as a V8 back in 1983, 84. But we could have wound out and got more horsepower. You can go for more horsepower, but the car would be less drivable and it'd actually be slower overall. So Porsche kind of knew what they were doing with this stuff. All right, guys. So this might be a long one. Hopefully we figure it out. But I can't really turn this one into a part 2 because no matter what happens, the owner is not going to wait till next week for his car to get out of here. So we're going to go through today and just figure out what's going on with this car. And then we'll see where it goes. We should be able to get it started, but might take a while because we're going to try and start from the beginning here. I am using my laptop, so it's going to kind of be hard. I thought about using my phone, but I couldn't figure out a way to prop it up. I have tripods and stuff, but I didn't think that was a good idea. So anyway, 217 horsepower turbo engine here. Stuart says hi from the UK. Good to see you. So this engine came in with a blown motor, but it did run, surprisingly. So I was very shocked when this car came in because it didn't come in because it had a blown engine. It came in because it just needed some odds and ends. The previous owner, before this owner bought it, had it sent out for paint, and they did, I wouldn't say as a good job, but good in the fact that at least they were thinking to remove the mirrors when they painted the car. Because one of the issues you end up is if you don't move the mirrors and all the stuff like that, is that you'll end up painting around it. Maybe a worse painter might have just painted the mirrors while they were on the car and just painted the rubber and everything. But what happens is you end up with these little lines around the outside, and over time just causes the paint to chip off. So you kind of want to remove the mirror so that way you get everything painted underneath and it makes the paint last longer. So good on them for removing the mirrors. Unfortunately, they didn't have a depinning tool to remove the mirrors. So what did they do? They just cut the wiring. They cut the wiring on the hatch, they cut the wiring on both mirrors, and a few other places. So we had to go in and just fix stuff like that. We had to go in and repair all the wiring. And then the owner said that he wanted a rebuilt turbo on it. It's been a while now, so I don't remember exactly why. I believe it was kind of worn out. So we go to pull the turbo, and then we're going to put a new turbo in there, or rebuild it and put it back in there. And I believe some studs or something went wrong, and he goes, "Oh yeah, check the belts. We had the belts done." So pull the belts. The belts are all goofed up, and I don't remember exactly why. We had low compression or something. The car ran great. I drove it around a little bit, but we ended up with some low compression. We go down in the cylinders, and you could stick your finger down in between the cylinder walls. So now it's a full engine rebuild. So we went ahead and pulled the engine. We had it sleeved. Seemed to have taken forever. We get it rebuilt and we get it back together now. So the car ran, but since then we had to do a battery tray because it was rusted out. So we had to move some wiring around and do some stuff because when you're in there, of course, you got the computers and everything. You have to put down blankets, and you have to pull a lot of stuff out of the way when you're welding, or you'll just set it on fire, glove box, etc. So we got it welded in. So some stuff's been jostled around up underneath the dash a little bit, and then we had to put the computers back. So could it be something's loose? We don't know. All I know is I got in the car and tried to start it up. Car ran, should have started. But that's not where we're at. So today, what we're going to do is try and figure out why the car doesn't start. And I just want to take you guys through some of the thought process that I go through when I'm trying to figure out why a car doesn't start. So, as you may know, when you turn the key and the car turns over, you want to make sure that you have tach bounce. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you that on camera. Might be able to take you out to a car if you really want to see it bad enough. Look at my no start video on my 924S. I believe I just called it 944 no start because it's the same engine. But you'll see the tach just moves like that a little bit. And what's happening there is that is showing that not only is the computer getting power to it, or the DME getting power, but it's also seeing a signal from both sensors that it can turn the fuel pump on. And once the fuel pump's on, it's also going to be spark. So actually it's going to try and turn the coil on and everything before that. So it's sending signal to the coil and it's turning the fuel pump on. Theoretically, it's a separate wire, but you get the idea. You have power at the computer. Those sensors are working. And now you've got pulsing at the coil, and you have power that should be going to the DME relay to tell it to turn the fuel pump on. So that's what you're looking for. If you do not have tach bounce, it could be your sensors are bad, you have broken wiring in your sensors, or you're just not getting power to the computer through the DME relay. So when you turn the switch, they call it the DME relay or the fuel pump relay, and that confuses some people because there's two relays in there. So one relay powers on the DME or the computer, and the other relay is what the computer uses to control the fuel pump. And the reason why that is a safety feature. So if you're in an accident and the lines get severed, the engine's going to stop immediately. But if you still have the key on because you're passed out, knocked out, or you just run away from the car, then now there's fuel still flowing. So the engine stops because the fuel's been cut. The computer immediately cuts off the fuel, so it's just not continuously pouring. It's a bad problem back in older cars. So then you get fires and you can't put them out because the fuel's still trying to pump out of it. So anyway, that's a safety feature, and that's why the computer controls the fuel pump. Okay, moving forward. We do not have tach bounce, so we're just going to start right there. And today, kind of want to work it where you guys can interact with this and like I said, I'll be going down the list, so I don't want you guys to try and get ahead of me. I want you guys to enjoy it, but I also kind of want to see what your guesses is. So the one who guesses it correctly, but don't go jumping like 10 steps ahead. I guess you could, but we're going to try and go down the list because you want to start with the easiest thing. Now, this might be just something easy. We don't know yet. But, and then this will be a boring show, but I'm almost going to bet that something might have got jostled somewhere and it's going to be kind of tricky to find it. So I'll tell you what I've done so far. Turn the car over and there's no tack bounce. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to change your DME relay. So on a later car like this, you're going to find your DME relay right here. And it looks new, and it might be, but if the DME relay isn't working, then you won't get power to your computer and you won't get tack bounce. So that's a good place to start. And what we can do is we can actually take a 3-pin jumper and plug it in. And make sure that it works. Now, what I want to do here is let you guys hear the fuel pump kicks on. So the fuel pump is kicking on. Okay. So I have fuel pump, so that's working. And you can hear the fuel. You guys hear it? That's fuel in the rail. So we have fuel and we have a working fuel pump. Of course, computer controls the fuel pump. So our concern right now isn't that we're getting fuel. Our concern is that maybe the computer's not getting power. So now I've tried this already, but if it starts up, then we're going to know that maybe something's just loose somewhere, and I'm going to still have to like sort it out. But what is it? Not sure. Okay, so I'm going to get in the car. Let's find the keys. It's in neutral. Let's see what happens here. Okay, there's no tack bounce. So we are sending power straight to the DME through that jumper, but that still doesn't mean that there's power getting to the computer. And it also doesn't mean that the sensors are working. So Nathan asks, is there spark? No, there will not be spark if there's no tack bounce, because we either don't have power getting to the DME or computer. I'm just going to refer to the computer as the DME from here on out. So we don't know if we got power there, and we don't know at this point if we have working reference sensors. Now, there could be something going on with the flywheel and all that, but it was a running car before, so we're going to assume that the flywheel's fine and we're not missing any studs. So things break says speed and reference sensors. I check resistance on the DME terminals to see if they're connected. So that's our next move right there. Things break. So I have already ohmed out the sensors. They are brand new. We go ahead and replace them anytime we do an engine rebuild. They're brand new and they are within spec. Both of them are about 800 ohms. So that tells us sensors are fine, but that still doesn't mean that we're getting power to the computer or we're getting power through that. So if you guys watched my 1986 gray turbo video, then you'll know that. Oh, I wish there was more lighting in here, but oh, there it goes. This right here is a major culprit for braking right here. So this is your sensors on this side here, but this side goes to the DME. and they like to break in here. And when they break, now you don't get any signal to the DME. So that's where we're at. And the way to do this is you just disconnect your sensors there, and then you're going to take your multimeter, and we're going to put it on the ring out setting here on my multimeter. So that just means I don't have to look at it whenever I have a connection. It's going to make a noise like that. So if I don't hear that noise, that means the it's not working. So let's see. Play with the sensors in the back of the engine. That's what we're getting ready to do. Well, I played with them a little bit. I didn't have any luck. So the thing is I'm going to actually first pull the computer. We're going to make sure that with that jumper in, we're getting power to the computer. And then we're going to check the continuity on the wires from the sensors. So AA96 says, what's up, Brent? I'm sorry I'm late to the party. Well, it's good to see you here. We were just getting started. So you can always go back and watch this later for what you missed. But basically, we have no tach bounce, and we're just trying to diagnose what's going on with this car. So first of all, I'm going to get in here. The computer has been put up. Everything looks pretty good in here. This carpet was missing when we got the car, but I'll see if I can find some. Probably have one laying around here. We'll make this look nice for him. So I'm going to pull the carpet down here in the passenger footwell. This is where the DME and KLR are on this model. And the turbos and every car afterwards. Oh, there's screws in there. Okay. Okay, I got to go screwdriver. I thought that I had that ready, but I was thinking it was a flathead, and for some reason there's Phillips screws in there. So I didn't go too far into this. This is as far as we've gotten so far. All right, here in a moment, maybe. All right, guys, you can see that? All right. I was expecting flathead screws, but I don't even know if I got to take that out. I can see this here. There was no wood board in here. I'm just going to take it out. Usually there's a wood board and you have to take the Phillips heads out, but it's missing. So this is our DME plug right here. And I've taken the jumper out at the DME relay. And now we're just going to see what we can do before we get into ohming this out. So I'll be right back with the multimeter. Okay, I'm back. I went ahead and put the jumper back in the DME relay, but I didn't put the spade in that turns the fuel pump on because we don't need that running right now. We just want to make sure we're getting power at the computer. And so now I've got it set on 20. And then let me grab my phone. Okay, so now I'm back, and this should be good for a while. So let's go to, this is how we do it. If I don't feel like looking it up in the book, we'll just go over here and just Google it. That was a KLR pin. That's an S pin. Here we go. So we're looking for the one that gives power. Right off, I don't remember, but you can always just Google it. It'll come right up. Just put in DME pins. Because I know the grounds are like 18. Okay, 18 is the power. 19 must be the ground. Okay. So we're going to check to see if we have, yeah, 18. So this is going to be, hold it like this. This one will be 18, and you can just take this and ground it. I should see 12 volts here. I want to just connect this to a ground over here and make sure I'm doing it right. So I have the jumper in, and I have power here. I mean, I have, I'm not getting 12 volts here. So that's something. There's a jumper in there, and I'm not getting 12 volts. I'm going to put this up here. Basically, that's what I'm getting. So could mean that we're not getting power to the DME. Now, why is that? Maybe I need to turn the switch on. Maybe I shouldn't, though, because that power that comes off that always has power. That's why you can hear the fuel pump run. So no, that shouldn't be it. But maybe. Huh. That's definitely the fuel pump. So I disconnected the fuel pump. And I should just have the jumper set about like that. And I should have power there. The spade connector inside there feels a little loose. It's almost like it's not grabbing. So maybe that's it. Could be a bad connection inside the DME right there. Let's try this again. Well, I think we got something that time. Oh. Nope, still nothing. I'll go through and see if I have 12 on any of these other ones. That should be the power supply. It says it comes from terminal G5 at DME. So what I'm doing is I'm just pinning all these out just to see. I'm not going to get 12 volts on a lot of these. Of course, they're for reference sensors and stuff, but I'm just making sure that, like, I'm just going to see there are the places that 12 volts comes in. I'm going to see if these pins are also getting 12 volts. So it jumped for a second there, but then it goes down. It's just getting fluke readings. Yeah, I'm not getting 12 volts here at the DME relay. So Didier says bad ground. The ground that I'm using is door strap, so I know the ground's good because I can wiggle it around and I can just use. I tried 2 different grounds. But yeah, right here, this feels really loose. I would probably need somebody to wiggle that as I'm checking. But what I could probably do is bend this just a bit to see if I can get it to bite down in there. Now, is this the problem? Oh no, but if the computer doesn't get power, then we're not going to be able to go very far with that. So I'm just going to grab a pair of pliers here and see. Of course, they're going to be up here. All right, so Don says finally able to join everybody. Great to see you, Don. Zero says, what's up, y'all? So basically I'm going to take this and I'm going to twist it just a bit to make it kind of fit down in there and see if that is the issue here. So by making it broader. So let's see if you guys can see that. I kind of kinked it just a bit to make it a little bit fatter, because I can wiggle that down in there and it might not be making a good connection. So let's find out. Put this right back in there. I might have made it too fat. Yeah, I made it a little too fat. Okay, I'll flatten it out a little bit. Is anybody going to watch the Super Bowl tonight or have any parties? Okay, I'll flatten it out a bit. Zero says nope. I don't blame you. Everybody's working in their garage here, huh? I still got a little. I flattened it out a little bit. It's so funny. That plastic is super thin, so it's getting it past plastic. Yeah, that's what it's looking at, Keenan. That's exactly what it looks like. It's good to see you here too. That's exactly what it's looking like so far. It so far just looks like I'm having to flatten this thing up to get a good connection. That'd be really nice if this is the problem. Maybe someone had done something to the previous DME that was in there, the DME relay. Now I've pretty much had to make it flat again just to get in the plastic, but okay. That fits a little bit tighter, but that doesn't tell me whether or not it's tight in the plastic or it's tight in the actual connector. So we'll just try and go from there. All right, moment of truth. Let's see. And that's enough power to turn the fuel pump on, so we know we're getting 12 volts there. This is still we still have nothing. Everything looks good down here. What I could actually do here is just check the continuity from the DME socket to this pin. So that might be the next step here. So still could be sensors, but if we're not getting power, I don't want to go jumping to those conclusions. So James says, if only it was the Panthers. Yeah, they started finally doing something at the end of the season. I don't think they were Super Bowl bound by any measure, but it's been nice for them to do something. Miss the old days. Yeah, if you're gonna go into town today, it's gonna be kind of crazy tonight. I think all these bars. Okay, so I'm prepared for this. Does the socket show any sign? No, it doesn't, but it looks like maybe it's been pulled out and inserted hundreds of times and it's just worn out. We had this with an 89 turbo not too long ago. And the bad thing about these fuse boxes is on any other fuse box made by Toyota, Ford, or whatever, you can reach in there and re-crimp the little spade connectors down in there. But on these, you have to take the whole thing apart. So what we had to do just to get the clock to working again, the best way to do it, because otherwise you're going to damn it. It's got that plastic cover and then it has a slit in it. So to do that, you have to damage that. And we weren't about to do that. So someone had just wiggled that fuse so many times, pulling it in and out incorrectly, probably with pliers. Don't do that. Use the correct tool. But they probably pulled it out so many times it just spread it out, and it's not a whole lot. I mean, I told her, I was like, I can rebuild it or put a new fuse box in here, but other than that, it's like I'm not going to charge you anything to like take a fuse and modify it. It'll stick a little bit better in there. It's not a good way to do it, but I mean, on a pristine show car, you want to spend several $100s making sure that your fuse box still looks pretty and everything's plugged in the way it is. Who's going to pull the fuse there now, right? It's one of those things. So try and do it right, but it gets expensive sometimes for almost nothing. So yeah, I'm going to stick a wire. What I'm going to do is I'm sticking a wire in here, and then we're going to go back to pin 18 and connect this to it, because my leads on the multimeter is not that long. So we're going to use this as an extension here, and we're going to pin out which one that is. Okay, so when I do this, I've already got it in pin 18. When I do this, this should ring. I'm tangled up. I almost reach it. Of course, the shorter one is the one I'm working with here. Okay. Well, that's interesting. $18 is the correct pin, like I thought. You hear it ringing out. Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. Let me see here. Maybe this is just getting a better connection than that spade was. Well, Nathan says if it has continuity, could it be the DME? Well, we've got the DME disconnected, and I'm running power through it through the jumper. And how I know I'm running power through it through the jumper is that the fuel pump's not working. So I know I got the right ones, because when I stick this one in here, here's the fuel pump. Well, I think anyway. That's the fuel pump. Let's try that. That turns it off. So that is the power source there. So we know the power source is the bottom one. There's three, and I can't really illustrate how they are, but you have the power from 30 right here. That's constant power from the battery. You have this one on this side to you guys, and that would be for the DME, and then this one's for the fuel pump. So as I disconnect them, I can hear everything turn on and off, etc. So if I just plug the two in, like the computer in that, I'm not going to hear anything because the power isn't connected. So there should be power flowing through that because we know the fuel pump is turning on. So coming back over here, we do have continuity. Now this is stuck in the door. Okay, we have continuity. We're going to check for power again. And I tried a few other grounds because it could have been that I just didn't have a clean ground. That happens sometimes. So let me come back out here. Can you guys see again? Okay, so that's stuck in 18. Everything's in the correct spot. We're going to 20. I even have a ground here I could use. Just plug it in there. No. So that doesn't make much sense. So I've checked myself twice, tried a different ground. There's not a broken wire between that. I'm just thinking that maybe I'm tight in the plastic, but I'm not actually tight down in there. So let me try the side I didn't mess with. We'll try it again. Let's try it. I'm going to. Yeah, I'm thinking it's a bad connector inside the DME plug, the DME relay plug. I just tried it again. I'm scraping off any stuff here to make sure I get a good ground. There's like some corrosion. You can't even tell if I'm doing anything. Like it still looks. Let's try and stick it here. It's a whole different grounding area. And nope. So when I plugged in the into the wire and I got a connection, I'd actually folded the wire in half. So let me show you. I'd done that to the wire. So what I'm thinking I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to make a jumper out of wire like that to get the 12 volts because these spade connectors are just too thin. So that's what I'm going to do right quick. I only need, actually I could just use that wire. It's a bit long. I have a shorter wire already prepared in advance in case I had to do stuff like this. But since we know this works, I'll just pull it back. All right, let's find out. But yeah, it doesn't look hot, but these DME relays can get hot sometimes, especially when they're sitting next to the fan relay. They really didn't think that one out. Fan relays like to get hot, and then DME relay gets hot, and then it's just downhill from there. I know I've got 12 volts there because the fuel pump kicks on. Interesting. All right, let's see if the wire actually gives us 12 volts. And I'm going to actually stick it on the ground of the battery. I've got the shorter lead here. Let me just grab this. Nope. So even with a wire in there, and it's connected to the ground on the battery that I know is clean. But what I'll do is I'll set this up over here where I can see it with the ground on the battery, and then I can wiggle it around until we see something. So now I can see the multimeter over there as I wiggle these wires. Now I know so we know we have power here, and we know that that's just a fuel pump. Yeah, the fuel pump kicks on. You hear the fuel pump running. There's 12 volts there. That's very interesting. No, there's still not 12 volts, even after I'm wiggling these around in there. So we have power, and we know we have continuity to that. Let me make sure something didn't get unplugged while I was messing with it. Still plugged in. Fun stuff. So broken wire in the harness. It's possible. I mean, anything's possible at this point. Make sure my ground's good here. Yeah. I mean, that thing is wedged in there. I mean, it doesn't make any sense for it to have continuity and then this to also have power. And just for the heck of it, I've been swapping them just in case I'm getting the wrong one. I mean, there's only another one to choose from, but so I go in this one here. Well, if it's the harness, it's not the end of the world. I mean, we can always fix that. But it doesn't point to any signs of it being the harness so far, if that makes sense. But it doesn't point to any signs of it being anything. So we know we have power because the fuel pump turns on, and then we know we have continuity through the harness there. This makes no sense. Yeah, this makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. There's still an 18. It's still plugged in. We know it's the right one because it rings out. Continuity. We have a really good ground here on the battery. Yeah, I might have to try that again. I mean, if I had it that easily, by just sticking that wire down in there, I should have continuity all the time. And you could say, well, maybe there's views, but how did I have continuity? How is the fuel pump turning on if I don't have power at that? So I know I have 12 volts here, and I know I've got No, we haven't got that far yet. John asked if we had pulled the fuse block to check underneath. No, not yet, because so where we're at is we're just making sure we don't have power getting to the DME. So I pulled the DME relay and we jumped it. That didn't do anything. So I ran to make sure I had continuity to the DME. We have continuity, and we also have power on 30 coming off the relay because the fuel pump turns on. I mean, I haven't checked it, but I don't need to because I can hear the fuel pump loud. So we know we have power coming from that same point. And if we have continuity to the DME, we should see 12 volts there, but we're not. So I mean, we now have to eliminate anything that might be happening. I know that this wire is good because this is the one I used to test for continuity and it rang out. So it's a brand new wire I cut off this morning. It's not broken. So it isn't that. My best guess is that inside the fuse box somewhere, it's probably melted or spread out too far. And the more I've been plugging things into it, it's just probably completely fallen out. So, like someone said, we had continuity at one time. So we need to check continuity again. So let's do that. All right. So this is our my wire. I'm going to put it back in there to where we had continuity to 18, pin 18 at the DME relay. I'll come over here. Set this back on ring out. And now it, maybe. Now it doesn't ring out. So let me check this again over here. Had to wiggle it around in there quite a bit. Okay. Now I'm just going to take this, put this back on 20 volts DC. Put this back on the ground. Without touching that, we're going to see if we get 12 volts. Just plug this in, see if 12 volts come through. Make sure I'm on the right setting. It should say zeros on there when you get the right setting. You know what? Got another problem. My multimeter died. Yay. Okay, I do have more batteries, but that could have been part of it. So what tends to happen is that there's a battery light on here that goes off, but it did not. So I thought I was playing with a fine battery, maybe chasing my tail because the battery was dying in this thing. I don't think it'd be that obvious. All right. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen on the live stream. Okay, well, I haven't used all the batteries, but they are not in the drawer where they belong. So we will just have to try and do it again. Yeah, it seemed the multimeter was working fine, and then I noticed that instead of bringing up to zeros when I went back, so it has a 1 when you're doing ohm readings, and then or I for infinite, and when I switched it over, it didn't go back to zeros for the DC reading, so it's working fine up until then. And I even did a reading at 12 volts earlier than that. But I have a case of 9-volt batteries. Like I said, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen on a live stream. So at this point, my multimeter is out. That's great. That's wonderful. So what I'll do is we're going to try and just put the thing back on and see if now that I have that wire in there, it's actually getting power. Oh, absolutely. Everything takes 3 times longer than you think it'll ever take. And I didn't really worry about it. I was like, well, if the battery dies on live stream, I have a box of them. And I just saw them. I don't know where they're at. I might have taken them out. Maybe I was doing something with them and I put them on my desk, but I don't see them there either. Don't remember changing it. I always steal it from the smoke alarm. Okay, so at this point, I have jumper with, I'm using the wire as a jumper. We're just gonna get in here if I can and see if we have tack bounce. I saw the tack bounce, but I think that's just the gauge turning on. Okay. Well, with this setup, I can't run the fuel pump to actually know if the car is going to start. I was just looking for tack bounce. It's not consistent. I just see it jump a little bit when I turn the key on and off. So that's not really helping me any here. Yeah, I don't see that happening. So Happy Fox says, have you checked the key switch? So the way we're jumping this to try and make sure we're getting power to the DME, we're taking the ignition switch out of the equation. So we're running power. The way the relay works is that the ignition switch sends power and then it tells 2 other contacts to apply. So the power isn't actually, that's going to the computer, isn't actually coming from the switch. It's a proxy. So when we're putting power through 30, we're running it as if the relay would be there. So that's no problem. Hey, it's I just explain things in detail, so for everybody. So because it can be a lot to understand. So if you don't do this every day, it gets a little confusing. So basically, we've taken the ignition switch out of the equation. Those are sent on sent by different terminals, and that tells the relay to kick on. So we should have straight power going to it. And I was reading 12 volts at other points earlier before the multimeter died. Maybe I'm chasing my tail because, well, I would like to think that I'm not. Maybe the multimeter was dying. There's a battery light that usually flashes to tell you to change the battery. That wasn't on, so I don't have the best batteries in there. So maybe the batteries was just suddenly died. But I don't think that I am, because I still don't have tack bounce. So there's something going on between that connection right there, between the 30 port and that. I believe it's on the actual wire that runs to terminal 18 on the DME. So that's my best guess. I think once we figure that one out, we get it cleaned up, whatever it needs, I think that will do that. So anyway, guys, I think that's about it for today. I think that is the problem. Didn't see that one in my bingo card, but I'll keep you updated on what's going on so far. Like I said, ignition switch seems to be working. We're not to that point yet, but obviously if you're not jumping it and you're not getting power, it's probably not there. The sensors are new. The wiring could still be bad, but we don't even have power getting to anything. So I think it is just a bad connection there. So anyway, guys, like I said, I'll post this over on the Facebook group and let you guys know once I get it running. I'm going to go get some multimeter batteries. If I had some, I would just pop them in. But I appreciate you guys for coming out. I hope you guys enjoy it. And don't forget to join us in Helen. I'm going to try and get this car running today, and I think we found it. So thank you guys for joining me. And we're going to try and do this again next week. So see you soon.